So in episode 6, again, this is where the whole like point of view thing happens or whatever, because in the shadows before the after the acid thing happens, which again is just like his mind doing whatever it does, and that's just our point of view of like it, like if we were actually to watch Salad Fingers, that's what we would see him doing or whatever. But to him, he actually sees these things happen, and like the river of acid after Hubert Cumberdale just melts down for some reason or whatever. And then in the shadows, it shows, somebody walking through, and then that's the point of view of what he sees, you know, because he actually like thinks that there's this other person, and there is another person in the house, and then like it zooms up to Jeremy Fisher or whatever, and then it just shows him on his finger, and then Jeremy Fisher gives him the horse. He names him Horace Horsecollar or whatever. And again, this is where he's asking him like, "Oh, I thought you were out fighting the Great War." And then after he gets the horse from him, he eats Jeremy Fisher. And keep this in mind, and I'll get to this in a minute. And then he starts playing with the horse, and this is where it starts to get a little trippy. So I think the fact that he ate Jeremy Fisher makes him think that he is Jeremy Fisher, because he ate him. Now he's inside him. Now he thinks that he is Jeremy Fisher, and he doesn't think this yet, because the funny thing about it is when Jeremy Fisher first came into this episode, he comes with him with a horse, gives Saddlefinger's horse call, and then he eats him, and now Saddlefingers has the horse. Now that Jeremy Fisher is inside him, he is Jeremy Fisher, and he's like has the horse, and now he goes to the toilet and saying, "I'm gonna wash my petticoat" or whatever, and then it doesn't. Salfinger starts freaking out because he thinks that the toilet is talking to him, and I think that the toilet is telling him that he is Jeremy Fisher. And since it shows from our perspective as you watch the episode, it shows him as Salad Fingers. I think that he thinks he is Salad Fingers at this point. He doesn't think that he's Jeremy Fisher. So the toilet is telling him that he is someone that he's not, and I think that's why he freaks out when he goes to the toilet, and then he just flushes the toilet and he says, "Wash those bad thoughts away." And then he goes back to the house with the horse, and then he freaks out because he sees himself sitting in the chair, and then he basically says the same thing. The Salad Fingers that's in the chair says, "Jeremy Fisher, I thought you were out fighting the Great War," and then it switches around, and then it shows the Salad Fingers that walked in the door as Jeremy Fisher, but then as the camera switches, it shows him through a back angle, and it's Salad Fingers. But there's still both of them, the one in the doorway and the one that's in the chair. And then it goes to the one that's in the chair, and now it's just Salad Finger with Jeremy Fisher on his finger. And then he starts fighting with Jeremy Fisher because he thinks that he did something with his daughter or whatever, which obviously makes me think that Salad Fingers does have a past life. And then Jeremy Fisher, and then again it like switches points of view, because at first he's on his finger, but then it shows him like as a real person, like it shows that he has feet or whatever. And then he says to Jeremy Fisher, "I never got to sample the delights of your flavor," which, if you watch the last one, in episode 2, he never tasted Jeremy Fisher. He only tasted Marjorie and Hubert, which I think is very interesting, because the fact that, David Firth put that into the episode, I think he's very, very, very smart for putting that in there, which I think is just, pretty cool. And then obviously that just explains more about the Great War, the whole radiation infection, the whole mental disorders, things like that. So again, just try and keep up. Like, he is a human being. He's just radiation infected. He has mental disorders because of either what happened in his past, or the radioactivity has infected him so much that he just doesn't know. And then in episode 7, Shore Leave, he finds someone buried in the ground, which he believes is one of his good friends. And actually, Hubert Cumberdale finds him, but that's just his perception of it, if you want to look at it like that. And again, like it's a dead corpse, but he thinks it's, and then he thinks it's his friend Kenneth or whatever, and then he says, like, "Oh, Kenneth, you're back from the Great War." Again, he always mentions this Great War, which makes me think that, you know, that he again was a human being, and that just something catastrophic happened that made him the way that he is now. And then he's just a survivor of this whole apocalypse that happened. So that's just the theory on that. And then episode 7 is just him, doing whatever he does with his friend. And then, like, to him, he thinks that he's like hanging out with his best friend, but like when we see it, he's doing weird stuff like bringing in a dead corpse with a nice suit on, on a little line, like a clothes hanger or whatever. And then that's that. And then episode 8 is what makes me go back to the thing I said earlier about him either being in the war or not in the war. Because episode 8 starts off, he says hello, and he's talking to his radio. And I don't know if this is the mental disorder thing, thinking that he's either like paranoid schizophrenic or has multi-personality disorder or something. I don't know if he thinks that the radio is a person or that he knows that he is talking to a radio, because he thinks the radio is his friend. And the thing about that is, like, I think he was in the war just because, like, he's waiting for something, like, he's looking for an update from the war. Like, he's using the radio to see if he can find out any new information on what's going on, Like, he doesn't know that the war is over. He doesn't know that he's infected with radiation. He doesn't know that he has, like, mental disorders, maybe from the life that he's led or from the radiation poisoning. So, and then it goes on, and then he does the thing in the cupboard, and this is the interesting thing, because I think everything that happens in episode 8 happens while he is in the cupboard, because it never shows him leaving the cupboard. It just shows him, like, in the cupboard, he finds the piece of hair, rubs it on his eye, and then puts it on the wall, and then he's in bed, and then shoves Hubert Cumberdale into the dirt, says a funny thing, and then the radio comes to him and tells him to give him back the hair, and that, he needs to clean the house. And then Saltfinger starts, like, tripping out, saying, like, no, I don't want to do that or whatever. And then, like, this whole thing happens and it shows, like, it just does, like, flashes, like, dun dun dun, and it shows him, like, getting rid of the hairs, and he eats the hairs, and then it shows him getting back into the cupboard, and he starts crying. And he was crying at the beginning of the episode too, which makes me think that, again, all of episode 8 happens while he is in the cupboard. Like, he didn't leave the cupboard. Everything that's happening in episode 8 is going on in his mind. So that's just the whole mental disorder thing, like, being in play. Like, obviously he's crazy, because he always thinks that there's these things happening, like, again, it's, again, like, he's like in a bad acid trip. He doesn't know that these things are happening. He doesn't know that he's doing what he's doing. He just knows that he's, like, alive, and there's just repercussions of either his past or just things that are going on currently, and he doesn't know what's really going on. So, all in all, I've watched Saltfingers more than enough times to give my own, like, theory on what he is and why he is and how he became that way. And again, this is just my theory. He is a human being, and there are other people that are human beings as well. They're just infected by this radiation or chemicals that happen because of the Great War. And he has tons of mental disorders, again, either because of the radiation or because of the life that he was living before, because of what happened during the Great War, or what happened after, or what happened before, because his life obviously took a turn for the worst. I mean, think of, like, World War I, World War II, like, some pretty traumatic stuff happened. So that's my theory on that. If there's any questions that anyone has about anything about Saltfingers, go ahead and ask. I'll do my best to figure it out, because I watch them all the time. I've pretty much memorized them. So go ahead and, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. And I hope that my little theory gave you an insight on why Saltfingers is the way that he is. Okay?